So let me welcome you to the 8th Lead Montessori Community Conversations. My name is Mirka, and we are broadcasting from Prague, Czech Republic. And it's the 8th session, which means we have been doing this for full 2 months. Every week on Thursday at 4 o'clock Central European time, or as we have started saying, Prague time. We are broadcasting this session, and the goal of the session is for the Montessori community to get together and we always try to address a topic of need for that particular week. It's important that during these global pandemic times, we are flexible with what topic we address, so we just go with whatever is needed that particular week. And because now, this week and past week, many European schools started going back to classrooms. We were looking for somebody who could speak to that topic. And as many of you have read an article written by Madlena Ulrich and Carla Foster, AMI 3 to 6 and 6 to 12 trainers last week. It was an article which addressed exactly what we are in need now, today and this week and next week, and that is going back to Montessori classrooms during the Corona pandemic times. So it was very obvious that we called to the source of that great article, which got shared thousands and thousands times on Facebook. And we asked Madlena Ulrich to kindly speak to us today. So just before I give word to Madlena, if you are looking to read that article, you can go to the website of Montessori Norway. And I'll share the website in chat later when Madlena starts speaking. And also I want to thank Nina Johansen from Montessori Norway for inspiring Madlena Ulrich and Carla Foster to write that article, because it was the Norwegian schools that were going back to school first, and that need arose in Norway, and Madlena and Carla kindly took the time, sat down and thought about all the practical implications on going back to the classroom during Corona times. So thank you, Madlena, so much for taking the time today. And as I said before, Madlena is a 3 to 6 AMI trainer. She travels all over the world, and she's in everyday touch with Montessori schools. So what she has to say is going to be very practical and very helpful to all of you. I'm sure of that. Thank you. Enough talking by me. Madlena, please take the word. Thank you.
It's really an honor to be here today and to be able to speak to you. As Mirka said, the article that I wrote was basically just an answer to the needs that arose among the Montessori community in Norway. And never would I have thought that it made the rounds around the world, but I should maybe have anticipated it, because that's what it does in such a community that we are. So, of course, thinking about it, that this article was written with Norway in mind, there might be some things in there that are very particular to our country and to the ways that the schools are set up. But apparently it hit a spot, and it made people at least think about the possibilities that there are, how one could work with the children in the times of Corona, as I said. So I just want to talk a little bit more and maybe also repeat some of the points that I brought up in this article. And then I have gathered some pictures also from the school where I have been working before and that I'm also involved in now, to show you really how they have then set up in the different parts of the environment to now accommodate for the new rules and regulations that they have around having the schools open for the children in these times of Corona. So again, when we are looking at these pictures, we might then also see something where you think that, oh, well, that won't be possible here, but maybe it gives you a good idea about what could be possible in your environment or wherever you have your school. One thing that I'm also noticing in these days is that when you look at the regulations that are being sent out by governments and health authorities, they seem to me at least, you know, I haven't read them all, of course, but many of them seem to be very much aligned. It's kind of like the same kind of advice that is going out, because of course, as one country after the other is adjusting to the situations, experiences are being made, and you know, governments are looking at each other's practices and finding out that, oh, this works, and oh, that didn't work, so let's do something else. So therefore also, you know, some of the advice or some of the ideas that we are willing to share here also can apply for several people around the world, because they are actually a little bit the same. So the thing that maybe happened first when people, or when we were thrown into the situation of school closings and online lessons and all that, is that many teachers might have thought, well, what do I do? Montessori is all about being together, being in a group, working in groups, giving the children freedom. It's about the materials. It's about that carefully prepared space. And so maybe the first thing that I want to point out is to help everybody to think about, is Montessori really about the materials? Or is it actually about more the principles behind that? Right? If we can't have our usual space, if we can't have access to the materials, what is it that is left that is still Montessori? Do we have to throw everything Montessori out and then do something else, traditional teaching or something else that we make up? Or can we actually stick to what we know is Montessori pedagogy? And that's where I'm also thinking that if we are really thinking about the principles that are guiding us, then we could set up Montessori everywhere. And we might also think about it as is that around the world, there are many people setting up Montessori in many different kinds of situations and in many different kinds of settings, and it's still Montessori. So let's think about these principles, right? We have a prepared environment, we have a prepared adult, and we have a child or children in different ages. And what is really important to think about for Montessorians is that you are really experts in, for example, setting up the environment, right? Anybody who has taken the Montessori training has learned a lot about how to prepare the environment. We have kind of like the basic ideas of how to do this. Your students have been out in schools to observe, to make floor maps of the environment and to look at it, how it is set up. And so we spend a lot of time of thinking about it and discussing also how to set up an environment. So these principles of preparing our space is what we should take now with us to wherever we need to go with the children, right? So for example, in Norway, one of the things that was very important is that when we reopen schools, children should be kept together in smaller groups. And the smaller groups, which now here was in the beginning 6 children per adult, they should be kept apart from other groups of children. And so you had to space out, right? So the first thing that one needed to look at was to see which spaces are available that you could go into. Is the indoor environment, could that be divided up into several spaces? What kind of outdoor environments would be available? So we can spread out. Is there a schoolyard, for example, where one can spread out onto, or other areas in nature that might be available, other areas outdoors that might be available, right? So once you have identified these spaces where you could spread out with your children, then we need to look at how can we prepare these spaces so that we can use them for being with the children on a daily basis. So whenever we're thinking about preparing the environment, right, we need to think about both the physical space and also the timing, the time-wise organization of that space, who is going to be where, when, and how, and also the social organization of how are we going to organize our group and what kind of rules are going to be important in these environments. When we analyze a space, we often need to think about traffic, right? What is the flow of people in this environment? How can we make sure that that the groups of children and adults are getting to the spaces and then back again without mingling too much, without too much waiting, in a clear and predictable way? How can we set up an environment that is functional, that takes care of all the things that we need to take care of? How do we create order in this new environment? And how do we also, to a certain degree, but not last but not least, how do we create some feeling of beauty in these environments so that the children also feel comfortable in these? Because I think that is still important, maybe not the first thing that you think about, but I think it is still important also that we bring this feeling of beauty and comfort into our environment, because that will also make it sure that the children will want to be there and will want to stay there. Montessori trained people are also experts of knowing the children, knowing the characteristics of the different age groups. That will also help you to prepare and to anticipate. What is it that the children are going to need now? How can we best meet their emotional needs, their physical needs, and also, of course, their intellectual needs, because we do know what they are. We know the characteristics of each age group, right? But we need to just think about it in a very new way, how we can address all these different needs as best as we can. And another thing that we are very good at that will help us in everything here is that we are good at observing. And this is really what we need to use, this ability to observe, to see whether things are working in the way we want it to work, to see whether the space is functioning in the way we thought it would function, to see whether the children are functioning in the way that we thought about that they could be functioning in that space that we have set up. And to look at every part of our new setup in our new classroom to see whether we are really meeting our goal or our idea of how things should be functioning right now. So these are three main points that we can focus on when we say that, how do we do Montessori in these unusual times? Well, we set up an environment, we take the characteristics of the children into consideration, and then we observe. And we help each other to find out whether it works the way we thought or not. And if it doesn't work, then we of course need to make changes to it. And that will allow us also to use the elements of Montessori that we already have and apply it to the children further on. Many people are thinking about, but with so many restrictions and without the materials and a new environment, how can you even give the children some kind of freedom in this environment? And I think that first of all, we just need to think about that. Yes, the freedom is not going to be like normal. It's not going to be in the kind of freedom where we just can say to the children, you can choose where to work, with what to work, and when to do things, with whom you want to do. There are new parameters. Right? There are restrictions, and we need to look at these restrictions as these are our new boundaries. And then within these boundaries, these restrictions that we now have to follow in order to ensure the safety for everybody, within these boundaries, then we need to look for new points of freedom. We need to think about that when we set up our environment, what could be a freedom of choice here? Maybe not everything, but maybe, but we can still make sure that in a new setup, for example, that we have, that there are some choices to be given. Maybe not the same as before, but that the children still have some activities where they can choose, I want to do this, or I want to do this, or I want to do it now, or I want to do it later. Right? That there is still this element in there where the children feel that they can make some choices, even though the parameters are different from the usual. Also, of course, independence is very important. So that is another thing that we need to make sure that even in a new setup, we can help the children to be independent as much as they can. And then we need to make the choice to say that this is now an area of health restrictions, and therefore that this is not an area where the child can be totally independent anymore, but where the adult needs to be in charge. Right? For example, when the children are doing now washing their hands, which is going to be several days or several times during each school day, they need to do that. It's probably not a thing that we can just leave to the children by themselves. At least not the little ones. I'm thinking about like toddlers and children's house children. Maybe it needs to be under supervision so that we make sure that they are really having clean hands at the end of their washing hand also, right? But the other, it doesn't mean that we need to wash their hands. We need to not necessarily do that for them, but we need to set up a situation where if it needs to be surveillance by an adult, then we need to do that, but they can still do the activity by themselves and make sure that they are, that they have that feeling also of taking care of themselves, right? And saying that also, I'm thinking about that with our usual Montessori work, we have laid down a lot of this kind of groundwork, right? Where the children will want to be independent, where the children are used to take care of themselves physically also, where even, something like hand washing is a very familiar activity to the child. And therefore, also, I think we have a very good basis that we now can build on that will also make it easier for the children to adjust to a new situation. We also have the technique of how to introduce new routines and how to reinforce them. Right? We have the technique of the grace and courtesy lessons. We have a pedagogical method that helps us to bring across to the children, this is how this new environment is going to work. These are the new routines in this environment. This is what we need to do every day. This is how we do it, right? We have all these methods already of how to show this to the children and how to cooperate with the children around this. And that's what I think we need to use also in order to help the children function within this new environment. And I'm seeing also here in your chat that many of you are pointing out that the children are resilient and we need to have trust in them. And so, when I'm talking to my colleagues who are back in the school with children also, they are saying exactly that too. The children adapt. Right? The children are, it took the little ones, like your 3-year-olds, your 2-year-olds, maybe a couple of days to remember where they were supposed to be, but they had no difficulties whatsoever to accept that these are the new rules. Right? You are now in this group and you can't just mingle with the other group, and you have to be in this space, can't go just onto that other space, and that's okay. And they adapted to that. And now that is for them the new normal. And of course, we shouldn't be surprised in many ways, because we know that especially the young children are, that's what they're all about, right? About adapting. But on the other hand, we might also think that wouldn't they find that very strange and very weird not to be together with their friends, not to have these choices? And yes, of course, maybe they thought that was a bit strange in the beginning. But I think one thing that helps the children also is that maybe for the first time in their whole life, all the adults around them are giving them the same message. All the adults are suddenly agreeing on something. Wash your hands, right? Follow the rules, be safe. Right? And I think that is, pretty seldom that the children are getting this kind of unanimous voice from all the adults around them, that this is how we need to do that. So of course, that is also reinforcing their feeling of safety, right? All the adults are agreeing on this. They're all telling me the same thing. So that makes the children also more competent in this situation. So what we then need to think about is that in our new prepared spaces, it might not be practical or possible to, let's say, take out all our materials and work with them as usual. Maybe we can to a certain degree, maybe we can in a certain limited way, but maybe we can't so much. But then I'm also thinking that what is more important now might be these kind of areas that we often feel we are spending too little time on in our classes anyway. Working with botany and biology, being out in nature, physical activity, artwork, also music in its various forms. And learning also from our environment that is around us. This might be the occasion to actually bring all these subject areas to the forefront and give us the possibility to work with them in a new way. So in that article, I kind of more or less randomly put together some ideas of what you could be thinking about in these different areas. For example, that you could do observations of the nature that is around you as a connection to the work of water or the work of air that we are doing in the elementary. Look at mountain formations, coastal formations, look at the water that is there wherever you are, if you have an outdoor environment. You might do observations connected to sun and earth. Where does the sun go up? Where does the sun go down? The length of the day, temperature variations. Right? So suddenly, especially if you have the possibility to be outside with the children more than you usually do, that gives you suddenly the possibility also to connect many of these areas to nature and do them really live, not like we did maybe before, where we have the materials, but we do it inside the classroom. Now we might not have access to the materials, but we still have our presentations. We still have this, the storytelling. We still might have some charts also that we can bring out. And so we can do it in nature where we might want to do it, or that is connecting it to it anyway. We can do a lot of language work, of course, wherever you are. Oral language work, with some storytelling, reading books also, doing poetry together. We can do songs, singing and dancing, and singing games. But we can also bring our paper outside and do writing work, reading work, connected to our outdoor space. And I mean, even if you are in an urban environment, there might be possibilities that you can think about of how you can connect the environment that you have around you to to the situation, so that you can help the children also discover their world in a new way, and at the same time connected to these areas of, let's say, academic study that they want to progress in also, and to practice their reading and their writing and their math skills also. So let me show you a few of the pictures that I have, because then I can also give you at least an idea of what has been done here at the school. And before I start, I really want to also thank my colleagues who are working with the children on a daily basis and who have been so fabulous about it, of finding all these solutions, and so gracious about sharing the pictures with me. When I asked them about it, whether I could have some pictures for this meeting, they were all, totally agreeing at once, and said, yes, here, and here's a little bit more, and take this one, and how about that one, and contributing to that. So I'm really, really thankful for that, and also really impressed of what they have been doing since then. So in order to kind of like give you a little bit of an impression, I want to show you these pictures. And as I said initially, it might not apply exactly to your situation. And you might also think that, oh yeah, well, nice nature in Norway, but I don't have that when I'm in the middle of St. Petersburg. And that is true. But again, as I said, maybe it gives you some ideas that will lead to another solution that you can find. Right? It's a little bit like when we go and observe in other schools. It might not be always perfect what we see, and we might not always see things where we go like, oh yeah, I have to do that. But what we see always makes us think. Right? And it always makes us think that, yeah, this gave me an idea of what I could do in my environment. So just as a background information, in the school that I'm sharing pictures from now, they do have a lot of space, but they had also to divide up the children in different groups by these new infection prevention rules. And as I said, there were 6 children, this is children's house age, 6 children together with 1 adult, and then 2 groups of 6 children could cooperate throughout the day. For example, if an adult needed to go to, I don't know, the toilet or to take a break, that the other adult will take over. And so the school has basically moved outside for the whole day, except for maybe on days where it's especially rainy, or we have had a little bit of a cold spell also, where some of the children then were inside, but again, in smaller groups also. We are also very fortunate that there is not only an indoor space and a relatively large outdoor space, but there's also a nearby forest, which the children and the school can use freely. So let me share with you my screen. So this is what we see here is really kind of like a roofed area that is part of the school ground. And they have set up these half walls with hooks on them. And these are for the bags that they got for the children's clothes. So everything that the children have is going home every day, so that the parents can check whether everything is in order or anything needs to be refilled and so on. And they are hung there along these hooks. So this is how it looks from the inside. And this was all set up within 4 days. by the staff. So you see also that there are names on these hooks so that the parents know where to find things, or that also the adults who are in the school then know where to find the children's equipment and clothing that they need for the day. And any of you who might know Norway, you know that even in the 17th of May, you never know what kind of weather it is going to be. So there can be anything between like 15 degrees, maybe even up to 20, and then the next day suddenly it's 5 degrees. So the children really need a lot of clothes inside and out. Here you see the fence, or the gate that leads to the school grounds, and they have set up then these 3 markers, you could say, that this is where they put all the bags with the children's clothes, and the parents also know that this is how far we can go on the school ground. We can pick up this bag and we can leave it here. This is, and they know then which bench, you could say, is belongs to their child, so that they are putting the bag with the clothing and everything in the right spot. And you can also see that there's the equipment to wipe your hands with disinfectant, alcohol, and so on, so that the parents are also making sure that they are clean when they come into the school grounds and when they are leaving again. But the parents are not really going any further than this, which is also the new rule of these times. This is their place, one place that the school has in the forest. And this lean-to, which is a bit of a fancy lean-to, that was built a while ago. So that's not new just for Corona, but it now has expanded a little bit more. So one group of children is there. And you might see also in the background, halfway along the trees, there is this cordon tape, red and white cordon tape. And that they have used everywhere in the forest and also on the school grounds to mark the areas where the different groups of children can be. So within the taped off area of one area, there's only then one of these cohorts, one of these groups of 6 children together with an adult. Here the children have their washing station for cleaning their hands. They have also drinking water and their own cups. And here also they have some bags that staff made for each child in the group, and every day they use these bags to bring their cup, their drink, and their food and extra clothing out into the woods. So these were also specially made for this occasion for the children. Then in that little forest, there is a little rivulet, a small river that occasionally fills up with water. So that was the natural boundary to the other side where the other cohort is with the children. So the children have kind of like, they are also then divided by this natural boundary. So on the other side, they have this lavvo, a tent where the children can go if it's cold or if it's wet outside. And again, another washing station. And you see also again the white and red cordon tape that they use to close off the area for this particular group of children. And you see also on this tree here on the picture of on the right side, where they have hung then the bags of the children of this group for their personal belongings. Of course, cleaning hands was the first thing that they needed to think about, right? How can we help the children wash their hands, especially if we are outdoors, and make sure that they can do this often enough, and that it is also that it is functional and that it is hygienic enough. So you see here they have a water tank, they have the bucket for the dirty water, there's soap, there's even lotion also that I saw in one of the pictures, paper to dry, and everything is set up in this little special setup then. So every morning when they go out also they need to bring water. children washing hands, disinfecting. Here you see their bags and the children who have filled them up in order to go out into the forest. Also the drinking bottles were bought for the occasion, and they have special name tags on them also, so the children don't mix them up. And the bags also have a little pocket there for their names, so that they are made out of cloth, so they can be washed also, and then the name can be put into it again. Here again, you see the children ready to leave or arriving in the forest, and also the wagon with all the water canisters in it that are being transported out into the forest every day. And you know, they don't have enough wagons, so that there are also adults who need to carry water with them. When they are outside, of course, then the children spend a lot of time just exploring in nature, exploring animals and the plants that are resurfacing after the winter. Somebody is exploring the temperature measurer, I can see there. Bugs. That's the good thing about 3 to 6 year olds. They are fascinated by the little animals. So there's a lot of exploration going on also to find, and the children making a lot of discoveries and learn a lot while they are being in the forest. They have also some areas where the ropes are set up so that the children can do some climbing and some physical activity, because that of course is another thing that we can do then much more of when we are outdoors. And I'm also thinking about that when we are outside, that traditional children's games are very important for things that we could do these days. You know, traditional children's games, they really hold all the things that you should do with children who are still in the development of their bodies, both 3 to 6 year olds, but also 6 to 12 year olds, right? In traditional children's games, you learn how to use your strength, how to develop agility, to follow the rules, to tolerate that sometimes you're the loser, sometimes you're the winner, to cooperate with others, because the children also do so much more so because of it's fun and they want to be part of the game. And they are basically practicing all the skills that children need to develop during their early childhood and up to adolescent age. So there, I think really this is something that we need to take into consideration of activities that we can and should do with the children, and really maybe come back to also the traditional children's games like hide and seek and the different chasing games that we have almost the same all over the world, just with different names and slightly different rules. Artwork is also being done a lot out in nature, but also in the schoolyard, because not all of the children are out in the forest. There are, I think, 2 groups there. Other groups of children are still being in the schoolyard. Also, we have a terrace that is right outside the children's house, so another group is being there. And they are doing different activities, many of them also connected to exploration in art. And also gardening. We had these little beds from before. They are not anything particularly fabulous, but they are just enough to give the children a lot to work on, to plant, to water, to observe nature. Here we also see an example of a new kind of bed that somebody has set up, where when you have little space, you can build it kind of like on what is it? In a vertical way rather than in horizontal. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Right. So that is one of the important work that the children also are then involved in right outside on the schoolyard. And here are these fabulous people who are doing that kind of job and who have developed all these different ways of doing it. So as I said, I'm very thankful to them to be so generous also to share and to all the work that they have done. They're waving with their flags there because it was just our National Day, 17th of May. So this is kind of like a picture also for a greeting for for everybody else. Now, what I think is, I said earlier also, what I think is important at the moment is that many of the adults are giving the same message to the children. One thing also that I think is important is that from our government, it was put great emphasis on that we need to give the children the feeling that everything is going to be all right. That's kind of like a national campaign that was launched, and that's also where the rainbow comes from on this picture, because it was together with this rainbow, and I think this is actually a worldwide movement, together with the rainbow, it was launched this kind of like message to the children that everything will be okay. And I think that's very important also, that we remind ourselves of that. We might be stressed out as adults, we might be anxious, we might be tired, we might, be unsettled in many, many different ways by what is going on in our personal life, in our work life, in the world at large. But I think when we are working with the children, it's really important that we stick to that message and that feeling of that it will be okay. Right? We don't know exactly what it will be, but it will be okay. We will figure this out. Right? And the adults will take the responsibility to be in charge and to make that happen, to help you to be safe and to help you to be able to live within this situation. So I think that is something that we need to keep in mind, all of us also, regardless of whether it is a particular campaign or not. I have also a few more pictures that from the elementary school, how they set up. So one half of a class moved into the gym to set up there in order to space out the children more. And what you might notice also on the children's desk is that they have like a binder or a box for their work, which is the same that we see here also. This is in the upper elementary, and they have divided up their large tables with tape into different zones. And each child in the school, from the first grade to the upper elementary and to the adolescents, they have now their personal stuff in boxes. So they are carrying the boxes with them, and that's where all their things are, so that personal items and items that are often being touched and used are not mingling with other people's items. Right? So, and the children are also then having their boxes on their designated spaces on the table, so that it is much more controlled of who's where and where are all their things, that are their belongings. This was set up, this is right outside the school grounds, where benches have been made so the children can have an outdoor classroom and gather outside on the logs. And the adolescent environment is also, this was also originally a previous plan to set up a field for agricultural work right outside the school. So they are also then spending a lot of time outdoors. Which of course, I think the adolescent is maybe the environment that is the best prepared for these situations, at least if they have an outdoor environment and a farm environment where they can both have the space and also be a lot outside and fresh air in order to work. So those were the pictures that I had. So yes, these are some of maybe my major points to point out to their community and to give some ideas at least of what you could do. And as I said, it's you might not have that kind of outdoor space or the kind of weather that you saw here. Luckily, we have been quite lucky with the weather for the moment. But the most important part is just that you think along these guidelines of saying that we can do Montessori. It's just the parameters have changed, right? And now we need to think about how we can make this happen within the parameters that we have. And we have to trust in that the children are able to adapt, we will be able to adapt, and that we, at the same time also, that we are just trying, as everybody else, we are trying to do the best as we can. And we just need to adjust as we go along from one week to the other to find out what we can do and how we can do it. So therefore also I think that sharing the environments, sharing the ideas is very important so that we can learn from each other and learn from the things that worked and didn't work, for example.
Thank you, Madlena. There are 260 people in this meeting, and another 65 are watching us on Facebook. And I'm quite sure that they're all so thankful for the sharing that you had just done. And yes, some people are clapping their hands. And thank you. And please, I also want to say on behalf of Lead Montessori, big thanks to the school that shared the photos with us, and to the team of teachers who were willing to share this with us as well. I would like to open the floor for questions and answers and sharing.